Every afternoon, without fail, Jake Riley would see it. That sable German shepherd, sitting there at the edge of the road like it belonged to the shadows. It didn't bark, didn't beg, didn't so much as twitch unless you counted those amber eyes, locked on the dusty window of the old Miller place. And Jake couldn't shake the question, what in that abandoned, peeling, vine-choked house could hold a dog's attention like that? He didn't know yet that the answer would drag a forgotten war story out of 70 years of silence, and, in the process, change more than one life, his included. Jake had come to this quiet Vermont town looking for something he couldn't name. Maybe peace, maybe just distance from the noise in his head. 45. Lean but sturdy, with the posture of a man who'd carried heavy packs and heavier memories, he'd bought his little patch of land sight unseen. The crisp air smelled like damp earth and leaf rot. Nothing like the dust and diesel smoke he'd lived in before. The first time he saw the shepherd, it stood just at the tree line, its coat blending perfectly into the late autumn woods. Magnificent animal, maybe 2 years old. But it was those eyes, smart, yes, but with this strange ancient sadness that hooked him. He took a step toward it, slow, careful, and the dog just tilted its head, then melted back into the woods like a shadow, deciding it didn't need him. From then on, the dog became a constant, not a pet, not exactly a friend. More like a ghost that checked in daily, always at a distance, never taking food, never crossing the invisible line between them. Jake called it Ghost. Because what else do you call a presence that refuses to be claimed? One day, curiosity got the better of him, and he followed. Ghost didn't lead him to a person, but to that ruin of a house at the end of the lane, the Miller place. Paint like peeling sunburn, windows clouded over, a gate rusted stiff. Ghost just sat there in front of it, staring, like a soldier on guard duty. Every day after that, same time, same post. When Jake asked his neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, about it, the man just shook his head. Some sad business there. Long time back, was all he'd offer. That only made the itch in Jake's mind worse. He started leaving food and water by the gate. Days passed before the food disappeared. And even then Ghost never let him see the eating. Still, it was something, a truce. Then came the overcast afternoon when Ghost walked right up the front steps and pawed at the door. Not scratching to get in, not demanding. Just asking, pleading. Jake felt that in his bones, the way only a man who's lost people can. He knew then he was done watching from afar. At the back of the house, he found a shattered window, slipped inside. The air was thick with dust and time. White sheets draped over furniture like shrouds. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused, as if the house was holding its breath. Ghost led him straight to an armchair, nudged the base, and waited. Underneath, Jake's hand closed around something dry and stiff, an old leather collar. The tag, tarnished but still legible after he rubbed it clean, read Valor. Ghost wasn't done. It headed upstairs, into an attic heavy with the smell of cedar and old paper. There, under the eaves, sat an olive-drab military footlocker. Inside, letters tied with a faded ribbon, black and white photographs, and a little wooden carving of a German shepherd. The letters told the story. Amelia Miller and Private Daniel, sweethearts planning a life after the war, with Valor the puppy as their shared promise. The last letter wasn't from him. It was from the War Department, blunt and cold. Daniel was killed in France. Jake sat there for a long time, the weight of that loss pressing against his own ghosts. He knew this wasn't just about a dog or an old house anymore. It was about a promise that hadn't been allowed to die, and maybe about giving it the ending it deserved. He dug into research like it was a mission, old census records, military archives, any lead he could find. Weeks passed. Ghost stayed close, quiet, almost like it understood. Then he found Amelia's obituary. One line stood out, survived by her brother Thomas. Following that thread led him to Thomas's descendants, and finally to a name in Boston. Liam Miller, an architect, the great-nephew. Jake called. Liam was skeptical, busy, but something in Jake's voice, that steady, soldier's tone, got through. The younger man agreed to come up for the weekend. When Liam arrived, Jake didn't take him to the Miller place. Instead, he brought him into his kitchen where the footlocker's contents were laid out like museum pieces. As Jake told the story, Liam's guarded look softened into something raw. He reached for the photographs, tracing faces he'd never known belonged to his family. And then Ghost appeared at the door. Liam froze. "Kaiser," he whispered. The transformation in the dog was instant, tail wagging, whines spilling out, launching into Liam's arms like a soldier coming home. Turns out Kaiser had run off from Liam's apartment months before. Jake and Liam just stood there, realizing what this meant, that somehow, this dog had found its way back to the very place its ancestor had once guarded. The for sale sign never went up. Liam scrapped his city projects on weekends to restore the old house. Jake helped, their work stitched together by shared silence and the occasional laugh. Kaiser roamed between the houses like he owned them both, and maybe he did. Jake had come to Vermont to disappear. Instead, he'd found a friend, a purpose, and a way to lay someone else's ghost to rest along with his own. The Miller house would stand, sunlight in its windows, the story of valor and Daniel woven into its walls. And every so often, when the air was still and the light hit just right, Jake swore he could see another shepherd's shadow watching from the tree line, keeping a promise no war could break. So what do you think? Was it just instinct, some long thread of loyalty passed down through blood and bone, or was it something we'll never be able to name? Tell me in the comments. Because stories like this, they deserve to be argued over, remembered, and passed on. Winter in Vermont doesn't ease in. It drops, all at once, like someone flipped a switch, and every leaf, every field, every inch of road just gives up and goes still. Liam and Jake worked through it anyway, bundled in layers, their breath hanging in the air, while Kaiser trotted between them carrying sticks he wasn't asked to fetch. The Miller house was waking up in slow, careful steps, boards pried loose to let the light in, floors swept clean of decades of dust, walls whispering their stories each time a hidden note or photo fell out from behind a plank. One late afternoon, while Jake was stripping paint from the old kitchen cabinets, Liam called him over. He'd found something tucked in behind a false panel, a tin box, rusted at the hinges, but light in the hands. They set it on the table like it might still be holding a heartbeat. Inside was a single photograph, smaller than the rest, its edges curled and yellow. In it, Amelia stood in the yard, hair tied back, smiling at the camera while holding a newborn. And there, half in the frame, was a man in uniform, not Daniel. "Who the hell is that?" Liam murmured. Jake didn't answer right away, because if the dates scribbled on the back were right, the picture was taken 2 years after Daniel's death. It didn't match the neat, tragic ending they'd built in their minds. And maybe that was the point. People don't live in clean storylines. Grief twists, life moves. And sometimes love doesn't stay frozen in the way we think it should. That night, Jake sat on his porch with a mug of coffee gone cold, thinking about Amelia. Had she remarried? Was this child hers? Did she ever tell anyone about Daniel? Or did she tuck him away like a folded letter at the bottom of a drawer? The war had taken so much, but maybe it hadn't taken her whole future. Liam didn't talk about the photo for a few days. But when he did, his voice was quieter. If she found happiness again, I want to believe she'd be okay with us knowing. With us, not painting her as just the woman who waited. The renovation pushed on, but something in the air had shifted, like they were building not just to honor a promise, but to honor the truth. Messy as it might be, one stormy evening, the three of them, Jake, Liam, and Kaiser, were sitting by the fire when Kaiser pricked up his ears and padded to the front door. Jake followed, pulling it open against the wind. There, at the edge of the porch light, stood another German shepherd. Older, grayer, thinner, no collar. The two dogs touched noses, tails wagging in slow recognition. Jake looked at Liam. "Friend of his?" "I've never seen that dog before in my life," Liam said. They let the new dog in, fed it, dried it off. No tags, no chip. But in the days that followed, it acted like it had always been there, curling up in the same spots Kaiser favored, staring out the same windows Ghost once guarded. Liam joked about naming her Echo. Jake didn't laugh at first, but later, sitting alone, he thought about the name and realized it fit too well. Because maybe this was how the past stayed alive, not in plaques or perfectly told stories, but in living, breathing reminders that showed up unannounced and asked to be let in. By spring, the Miller house stood whole again, fresh paint, open windows, a garden just starting to push green shoots through the soil. They held a small gathering, just neighbors and a few of Liam's family. Jake watched as people moved through the rooms, touching the smooth wood of the banister, smiling at the photos framed on the walls. Daniel and Amelia side by side, Valor at their feet. And one new picture in the middle of it all, Liam and Jake with Kaiser and Echo, the four of them in the yard, sunlight spilling over the grass. As the last guest drifted out, Liam stood in the doorway looking at the quiet street. Feels like they'd be proud, he said. Jake nodded, eyes on the tree line where the evening shadows gathered. And for just a moment, he swore he saw that familiar silhouette, the shape of a shepherd standing watch, before it faded back into the woods. And maybe that's the thing. Some promises don't end when you keep them. They end when you hand them to someone else and trust they'll be carried forward. So tell me, if you'd found that collar, that box, that story, would you have gone inside? Or would you have let the ghost keep its secrets? Because either way, the past finds a way to reach you.